are listening to Soaring Through the Depths, an innovative New Age podcast. We are Lindsey Marin, integrative multidimensional healer and spiritual mentor,
and Andrea Lauren, Spirit Counsel Medium, healer and intuitive life coach.
Join us as we talk all things spiritual, lifting you into the awakening of your divine potential.
Dive deep with us into the body, mind, spirit, and far beyond as we explore healing, expansion, creation, and the evolution of humanity to the next level of consciousness.
This is Soaring Through the Depths. Welcome to Soaring Through the Depths. I am Lindsey Marin, and I am here today with my partner, Andrea Lauren, and we are so excited because this is our first official podcast episode.
Yes, we are so excited.
Yes. And to kick it off, today I am going to be interviewing Andrea and talking about all things mediumship, which I think a lot of people will be into because really it's something that a lot of people ask me, well, how does she do it? So let me just introduce her really quick. So Andrea is a Spirit Counsel Medium, healer, and spiritual life coach. What she does is she channels and relays messages from multiple sources of the spirit realm to provide guidance and healing for people. She also helps people connect with their higher self and soul to help them navigate their next steps in life and provide necessary guidance that they may not be able to receive themselves. And she is able to work with those who are not able to communicate for themselves for various reasons like disabilities, medical issues, or with children, which is really cool because it's a way to tune in with what's going on with those people when they can't communicate for themselves. So without further ado, this is Andrea, and we are going to get started. So I guess we'll start with, actually, I was going to go into how you've helped me. So with all these amazing abilities that I just listed off, I just want to say how much you've helped me in my own life because, well, since day one that we met, which was just a little over a year and a half ago, you have shown me, really like built me up in ways that no one else has been able to do before. And I think it's because you've been able to tune in with my spirit team and really relay the messages of just how proud they all are of me and kind of like encouraging me along this whole way, and just knowing how supported I am out, like in this world, but also outside of this world, has been a big help. And you're so accurate. You've helped me tune in with my kids and be able to see them in a different light, which has been really helpful. It just makes you appreciate them in ways that you can't just by normal everyday, like being a mom. And so, yeah, I've been able to really, really be a better parent because of you, and also and be a better person because of you, because you just like bring it all to the surface. And I'm just so thankful for that. So let's get into it. I want to start with, let's go back and find out, when did you first become aware that you had these abilities?
Well, I've always had my abilities for as long as I can remember. Even like some of my earliest memories as a child, I was always able to see spirit that's crossed over. But at that age, I didn't quite understand it. It was normal to me. It wasn't until I started, commenting on it around like friends and family that I realized that it wasn't normal for everybody to see spirit all over the place. So that's for as long as I've remembered that I've had them.
How did that affect your social life and your family life when that started to come out? How did they react?
Well, so when I was younger, it was, I guess it was more accepted when I was, when my mom was still alive. My mom passed away when I was 8, but my mom also had mediumship abilities. And so I was never like judged or, ridiculed for that, or seen as, having imaginary friends or anything of that nature. But as I grew older and I started, living within a blended family, it wasn't always so much accepted. So as I grew older, I started to shut those abilities down, um, to try and be accepted more, so to
Mm-hmm.
say. So,
Got it. Yeah, that's really tough.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what types of life events, because you, as we know, your mother passed away when you were at a young age, how did that affect your abilities? Like other than changing the social situation, how did it affect like the way that you received information and things like that?
Well, certain situations throughout my life have caused my gifts and abilities to evolve, but I think it wasn't really until I was in my teen years that, as much as I tried to like shove it down, they were still pretty prevalent. Um, and it's I really came from a place of like, I guess, like coaching or like giving advice. And everyone would always say, oh, you're such an old soul, or you're so wise for your age, for your years. But that's when I started to develop the solid knowing, of just channeling information. And even then, I still didn't quite understand exactly what that was, because I didn't know anybody else that had my gifts and abilities. So I was kind of just like coasting on my own and trying to learn and figure it out. But after I had my spiritual awakening, that is when I started to communicate primarily with, angels, archangels, spirit guides, and things of that nature. So when I
Mhm.
was younger, if I was doing that, I wasn't aware of it. So it did start to change
Mhm.
and morph after that life experience.
Okay. And then, so what did it look like before your spiritual awakening? Like what kind of information were you receiving and how did you receive it?
Okay, so before, I primarily would just, communicate with spirit that's crossed over. So I would feel them, like I would know when they are around because the energy would shift. So I'm very sensitive to energy. And once I knew they were around, it's almost like a picture is painted for me, or more like, it's more like a computer screen in my head. And
Mhm.
so I can see them on there, and it would download information. So in regards to like what they looked like, or symbols or things of the past, and they would always pull up things that, so how do I explain that? Um, for example, if I was speaking to a person and their grandparents or like their grandmother had passed over, and her grandmother would always pick daisies with her grandmother would show me daisies. And so
Mhm.
then it was a way of being able to clarify that, who it is on the other side that's trying to communicate with them. So, but that would come up in symbols. And
Mhm.
so clairaudience, clairvoyance,
Mhm.
clear knowing.
Yeah. And from what I've learned, because this isn't something that's come naturally to me, but I've been studying it, is that, and tell me if I'm wrong, that spirit kind of, as you receive more information and symbols, you start to make sort of your own dictionary within yourself where you decide, okay, when I see daisies, it means a grandmother. Or when I see, for me, once I saw a dove, and that meant peace to me. And then it was like, oh, they want you to know that they're at peace.
Right.
So does that make sense for you? Like, is that kind of how you
Yeah, that
got
makes
your start?
that makes total sense, because I actually learned to do that when I was in my late teens,
Mhm.
early 20s. And it was because I actually saw Teresa Caputo on the Long Island Medium, and she
Love
said
her.
that she had a spirit dictionary. And I'm like, I could use that. Like that would really work for me. So I started setting that intention. And also when I was communicating with spirit or, any like counsel, I would set that intention that, I was creating that, and slowly but
Mhm.
surely it evolved. So yes, I do have a spirit dictionary now.
You have a dictionary and you still use it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay. So, how has the information you've received changed over time? So, I know you said you started with talking to deceased loved ones, and that was coming through first. But I know that you do a much bigger spectrum now. And what kind of when did that? I know you said with your awakening that really amped up, but what was sort of the process? Like I've heard other people say, okay, first I talked to dead people and then I talked to angels and then I talked to, and they like slowly came in. So what was that process like for you?
Well, the my awakening really was the catalyst for that change. Um, so after my awakening, I started primarily communicating with angels. It was archangels and guide angels, so on and so forth. And then it slowly started to evolve. And how I was able to differentiate that or realize that it was evolving is that I would see new people, but I knew that they weren't, or new beings, I should say. But I knew that they weren't spirit that had crossed over. So someone who was, living here previously. Um,
Mhm.
and so I would just start to question who they were
Mhm.
and why they were there. And slowly but surely, I would learn, okay, this is a spirit guide. And so, you know, I would, it evolved into like working with spirit guides, along with like the angels. You keep everybody that you've worked with in the past. It's just like you start adding onto it.
Mhm.
um but sorry, it's on pop up on my screen. um and then that slowly morphed and evolved into working with souls and higher selves. And um I'm trying to think what came after that. But then with the soul, I would hear and get information when I was around children, and that's when I started to learn that I was able to communicate with souls of people who are still living, which was really, really interesting. And I started doing a lot of work with new aged children, um, and children with disabilities. Primarily in the beginning, I worked a lot with children who had like autism, who were like nonverbal, or even children who have ADD, ADHD. I mean, that's what they're classified as. But these children have even new age children in general, they have a different way of doing things. They have a different way of living and being. And it's not always easy for them to be able to communicate with their parents, or with whoever they're with. Um, and so I realized that I was able to do that. And I was actually making a pretty big impact there, which is one of my favorite things to do. But other than that, I think that's it
Okay.
to this point.
Yeah. And you said that you felt you could feel a difference in when you went from talking to deceased loved ones to guides when you were first figuring out who you were talking to. How did you know that they weren't people who had once lived on the earth? Like what felt different to you? Did it feel different? Did it look different? Like paint a picture for us if you
Okay,
can.
so if I had to okay, their energy is very grounded and pure, and it matches the vibration of like source source light energy. Um,
Mhm.
so when you have someone that's passed over, that's crossed over, usually when they come, they bring that aspects of their personalities and things that they experienced here in this life when they were here living their life.
Mhm.
So that could be seen as like pain, um, or karma, or even down to like a wide range of or spectrum of emotion, which is a 3D earth thing. So with other beings who, were not incarnated here,
Mhm.
it's like this solid source light of energy, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Uh,
Hmm. So
so
less human like.
yeah, yeah. So
But is
energy,
it
I mean, energy is a big thing. It
right?
really just boils down to energy, being able to read the energy, and it's a completely different vibe when they're
Hmm.
there. And I did forget to mention, I don't know how I forgot to mention this, but um as I grew further and further in my awakening and started to slowly step into aspects of what I came here to do, I I started working a lot with star seeds and light workers, which are souls that have, incarnated here to help aid in the spiritual evolution that we're going through. And when I started working primarily with these people, or individuals, I started finding that I was communicating with soul family, that are back where their native, like home planet is, almost, kind of say, I know that sounds a little funky, but where their soul came from. So when they heeded
Where
the
they
call,
belong.
if they were,
Yeah.
in a different part of, our existence. So I am able to communicate with, beings on other sides there as well.
Yeah, and something when actually I had just gotten into that star seeds right before I met Andrea, and she solidified everything for me when we met because she was like, "You're a star seed, and your star seed family is cheering you on." And I was like, "I just learned about this, and I thought I was, but I wasn't sure." And just that was like that's like kicked off our relationship. But so what if anybody's interested? The way that I got into all of that and the information that helped me learn more about what is a star seed and what does that mean, especially in this time that we're in. Dolores Cannon has a lot of YouTube videos that explain that whole how would you call it?
Shindig. That,
The whole thing.
it encompasses, pretty much who they are, why they're here, what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their purpose, and it just kind of makes sense for. It does fit the category, like the ADHD kids and the autistic kids, and it it explains a lot as to why the kids being incarnated now are so different from the kids in the past, and the things that worked for children in the past don't work now
Yeah.
because they're totally different beings.
Yeah. And they're
So,
here to usher in the change and to teach us a new way of being and
mhm.
living. So they are not going to revert and and continue to do what hasn't been working thus
Right,
far.
right. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's very challenging for them. It's we're both star seeds ourselves, and it's been very challenging throughout our lives in certain points,
Hmm. Yeah,
to
and
fit in here.
if you're drawn to this and this kind of thing, chances are you're one too.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, just the fact that you tuned in with this is probably
a good
means
sign.
something. Yeah, yeah,
Starting point.
yes. So, okay, let's get back on track. I just wanted to go into that and explain it a little bit more for those who might not be familiar with the term, and give you an outlet to kind of look into it further if you are interested. And we will dive into this more in future episodes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how has the way you've received information changed over time? Because I know when we met, you kind of went through a transformation. This was after your spiritual awakening. You went through a few times where you told me, I used to sit and meditate before I would do a reading and gather information before, and now it's changing. So, what did that look like for you, that process? And that's more recent, correct?
Yes, yes. Um, I'd say within the past 6 to 8 months, it's really changed a lot. And for me, I realized looking back on it, it has a lot to do with just self-confidence. Being
Mhm.
confident within myself and in the information that I was receiving. So in the beginning, yes, I would go into a meditation and just try to connect and get, whatever information that I could as a good base or starting point. And then I would be able to fill in from there, because I felt like I was going in, equipped, to
Mhm.
make sure that I was providing like the clearest channel that I could. But as I grew stronger in my confidence of being able to um, basically trust what I was getting wholeheartedly, that I started, how do I kind of built me up in a way that I didn't really need to do that anymore.
Mhm.
Um, because I would just get the information and I was trusting it. And the more that you trust the information that you're getting, the stronger that ability will become, because it's always been there. It's just kind of like shedding light on it. So when you trust in that in yourself and you have that confidence, it just starts to morph and come out more in its own way. So I still do go into a quick meditation before I do readings. But it's just to kind of like, bring us into that space of God energy, source energy, and to put protection around us and to clear myself so that I can be, the clearest that I can be. And then I just roll from there. But I think, like, are you referring to like when I'm out and about? Yeah.
Well,
So,
that was another question about, and I actually just thought of something else I want to touch on too after that. But yeah, so now that this is coming in more I think you said streamline, you call it,
yeah.
information. So do you do more spontaneous readings now than you did in the past? Do things kind of just pop up as you're walking around, like Teresa Caputo, Long Island Medium style, where
Yeah.
you're like stopping people in the grocery store and doing readings for them? And how does that look?
Yeah. So actually, Lindsay was my very first person that I was strong enough to like just come out and give information to. And it was at her workshop the very first day or first time that I've met her. And it was just so strong that I had to do it. And I was like really, really nervous to do that. But so it started there. And prior to that, that's not something I would do. I was just too shy, too nervous, which is, you know, I know some people would think that's crazy because I'm pretty outgoing and loud, but um, slowly I started allowing myself, or like challenging myself, being more courageous to step out and to provide that information, because I know when spirit comes through, whether it's a deceased loved one or their spirit guides or the angels or whoever it is, that information is vital for that person in their point in time where they're at, their space and time, whether it's going to provide healing or guidance, next steps they need to take. So now
Mhm.
now I whenever spirit comes through, I will deliver messages, and that does happen quite often when I'm out in the stores, or um, people will just come up and, if they're just talking to me and they're there, then I will relay those messages as well, like if it's at the park. I mean, it's pretty much anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And what kind of feedback do you usually get when you do those? How do people react or typically react?
well, it depends. It depends. Usually they get a little like, they're a little nervous in the beginning, because I will start out and just let them know, who I am. Like I am a medium. I'm able to connect with spirit, and you have somebody here that wants to relay information to you. And it's a good mix of, people are really excited. People are excited to receive that information, but they're scared. And then you have those who are like, no, no, I don't know if I trust that. I don't know, and if that's the case, then I respect that. And then I won't pass that along. But
Mhm.
um, overall, the feedback that I get is, excited, a little bit nervous, but by the end of it, once I'm able to provide whatever message it is that they need, they're
Mhm.
always very thankful, and it always resonates and hits home. And, I don't think I really have had anyone say that they didn't need what came through. So,
Mhm. Yeah. And I know that you had said to me before that during a reading, sometimes there will be something that somebody cannot resonate with in the moment, but what is it that you tell them when that happens?
I tell them, if take what resonates and leave the rest. So if it doesn't, if I'm relaying messages and that individual's like, no, that doesn't make sense. No, I don't remember that. Or I don't know someone that has XYZ or, any of that. Like, did you, I have a dog here and this, the dog is with the grandmother. No, I never had a dog. So that's where I'm like, if it doesn't resonate, just leave it, but don't, just take everything with a grain of salt is what I say. And, and I do remind them as well that 9 times out of 10, within a couple days after the reading, it usually comes, I get quite a few clients that will come back and say, oh, I know what that meant now, so you might not get it right then and there, but you will eventually get it if it's really meant to be. So.
Right. And I know that the first time that I had a mediumship reading, years ago, during it was like, there's this grandparent, there's this person. And I'm like, don't know who any of those people are. And it was as soon as I got home and I started writing down notes about what I experienced, that it all just made sense all of a sudden. And I think sometimes in the moment you're receiving so much information, it's like kind of hard to process on the spot. But I've actually experienced people that have done reading, family and friends who have done readings with you that at first didn't resonate with something. And then they're calling me like every day for like the next week after. And they're like, oh my God. And now this makes sense. And now this makes sense. Like I put it together. So sometimes it is fitting the pieces together. So I think it is important to note that even if you don't understand it right away, it will fall into place at some point.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I try to remind people too that, before we start the reading, just to be present in that space, because it's very easy to allow your mind to try and start categorizing and making sense of the information that you are getting. And when you do that, the information that's coming through, it's coming through on an energetic level that does not exist within the mind trying to build and like categorize and all of that. So you can really miss out on the information that's coming in, or you can be clouded or confused with it. So that's my advice, to my clients when they're about to get a reading, or if, whoever listening today, if you plan on going and seeing a medium, that would be my best advice I could give you with that, is just be present in the moment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Very good. So this is something I came up with just while we were talking. I know I've had a couple people who are not so much skeptical, but that are afraid of having a reading done. And that can be, I know there are a lot of like amazing mediums out there. There are also some, and it's kind of what you hear about in the news and kind of what you hear about online, and that people are afraid that they're going to come from a dark place and that they're going to hear about when I'm going to die, or when they think that something bad is going to come through. So how do you deal with people who are in that space of fear and don't want to receive information, or a little bit more hesitant to receive information because they're not sure exactly where it's coming from?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is whenever you are seeking for information or guidance outside of yourself, that you pay close attention to how that person or that source makes you feel. Because I can say every medium reads differently. And it's like everyone's unique within their own gifts and abilities. For me, I do not seek out information that is fated or destined, or that sort of thing. Spirit actually doesn't even really give that information. So it really all just depends on the person that you're reaching out to, in regards to just kind of like feeling it out. If it doesn't feel right, then find somebody else. But this ability to be able to do this, I'm like honored and extremely grateful that I am able to be here and do this for people, because it does provide healing and guidance and steps to that nature. So I come from a place that I always, like I said in the beginning, when I'm meditating, I always pull myself into the highest vibration that I can possibly be in. And I always clear everything from myself that, I always ask that whether it's my energy, my thoughts, feelings, emotions, the collective energy, I clear all of that out, and I put like a, like a basis around myself. That way I can be the highest and clearest channel that I can for that vibration. I know I've met a lot of different readers and, mediums and intuitives and things of that nature. And they all kind of have that same goal in mind to do that. Again, not everybody's not everybody's good. Not everybody has the best intentions. And that's why I think it's, most important just to like follow your gut on that when you're out seeking someone to do that.
Yeah.
I
And I
answered
think,
that right.
yeah. And I think by follow your gut, or like what feels right.
Yeah.
For me, if I were to explain how that feels, it's somebody who lifts you, who makes you feel empowered. If you are receiving some type of message and it doesn't feel good, then you don't want to be there. I mean,
Right.
there's a difference though, because there are some messages that push you. And I know that sometimes when you're reading me, I'm like, you're digging into something that I'm not comfortable with. But it's something that I need to recognize in myself. And once my ego lets down and says, all right, Lindsey, this is something that you do, and it's something that isn't serving you anymore, and it's time to release it, then I'm like, okay, it totally makes sense. And, I'm able to go from there and really work on myself. So there is a difference. But I have had people do readings for me before where they just talked about, it was bringing through deceased loved ones. And this one woman, she just was talking about how much pain the person had been in when they died, and the negative emotions. And it was like she was tuning into a frequency, but it was a very, very low frequency that wasn't uplifting anyone in the room. And it was a pretty bad experience. And I learned a lot about how there really is a difference,
Yeah.
depending on where you're coming from, and what vibration you're in when you're receiving information. And I know personally that I've never had anything come out of you, or I've never heard anything negative come out of you. And if anything, you have just lifted my life in so many ways with your ability to take me to a higher place. And everybody that I talk to that has had readings with you, it's the same thing. They're just like blown away
Yeah.
with not just your accuracy, but the fact that you're able to build people up and empower them and help them see things in a different light. So
Well,
it's really,
thank you.
yeah, beautiful
I,
thing.
it's funny. I can confidently say for myself, doing this, I mean, I've done this my whole life, working with spirit, and they don't bring through negativity. They don't bring through lower depthful things.
That's human, right? That's more human.
Yes, it's very human. The things that they bring through is meant to heal or to
Mhm.
guide. So in the case of like when you were talking about the grandmother and all the pain that she was going through, I think you said it was grandmother.
It probably was. I don't think I said it, but I think you just knew it.
Yeah. So for me, if that is an example of that, if I was going through that in a reading,
Mhm.
that person or that soul that is there to relay that message would say to the client that's receiving it, I'm not in pain anymore. My legs
Right.
work, my body works, I'm
Mhm.
happy, I feel great. And it's them saying, I know these are the memories that you had of me when I was there, but that's not where I'm at anymore. I don't have to go through that or experience that.
Right.
But that's about the extent that they'll bring it up. It's just, they're always going to hit what that person needs to know. So
Mhm.
if that
For their
person is
own.
worried about, are they still in pain? Then their loved one is going to come through and say, I'm not in pain anymore.
Mhm.
Like it's gone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it works like that in all aspects. Um,
Mhm.
so if you are getting information that is like of a lower vibration or is causing you pain or things of that nature, it's probably not coming from the highest source that it can. And even like with you mentioning too, um, the when I've brought up things or I've channeled
Mhm.
things for you where it's like it does kind of like make you feel uncomfortable. That within itself, it does happen in readings, like somebody if they're having a reading for the first time. But I find that to happen more when I'm doing more down of like the coaching. So if you've had a reading with
Right.
me several times and then it turns
Yeah.
like that
Right.
coaching style,
Hmm.
that's
Because
when
you're
spirit,
digging deep into
yes. And they're like,
why
okay, you're ready.
is it why is it that you're doing this on the surface underneath of it all, and that's uncomfortable because our ego wants to protect that sacred place where we've formed these beliefs that may not like serve us any longer, but that we've been just holding on to as a defense mechanism. And there is a little bit of discomfort when you do dig into that, but that you're right, that is more of along the lines of the spiritual coaching, which is phenomenal, I might add.
Thank you.
We kind of do that to each other. We kind of
Yes.
spiritually coach each
Uh,
other
we coach each other every day,
every
but
single day of our lives.
yes. But the spirit will not give you more than you can't handle either.
Mm,
So
right.
whatever comes through, it's because on a soul level, you are ready to hear
You're
that
ready.
information and
Mhm.
to receive it,
Yeah.
and to do what you need to do with it. So
Yeah. That's great.
yeah.
Okay. So I guess let's start to wrap it up. But I do want to talk about if anybody does want to book a reading with you and get a little bit more information, how they can contact you. And for right now, I think the best way is to email us directly, and it's soaringthroughthedepths@gmail.com. And just type in the subject reading with Andrea, and if you want to go into detail how you do your readings, like on a physical level, how you do them, that you don't have to be in person, that you can do them from a distance, which is amazing. And that you do pretty much
Yeah.
always do them from a distance.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of my readings I do distant readings. I can do them in person, but I mean, I work with people all over the world. So I usually do either FaceTime or Skype, or it can just be over the phone itself. And which I like that because I'm just now starting to figure out how to record the sessions. And so, by doing it via, the internet, we do have that capability that you'll have a recording with that. But they last roughly about an hour. So like the first 5 to 10 minutes, I take and kind of explain a little bit of like what to expect. And I also I do like take like a roll count, just because I call in your entire council. So that would be your, source or God, any archangels that you work with, angels, spirit guides, and then any deceased loved ones that have crossed over. And so then I have to do like a head count, and I figure out exactly who's there, why they're there, how they, support you or work with you, um, on your soul level. And then so I'll share that information with you then. And then we hop into the reading, which takes about like 40 minutes. I try to keep it like 40 minutes. That way it leaves us, roughly 10 to 15 minutes at the end for any questions that you may have. So that's kind of what it looks like plays out. But it all just depends on how chatty they are, because sometimes it
Yeah.
can go over a little. So,
That's awesome.
but yeah.
All right. Well,
So
thank you. So, did you have anything else to add?
no, I think that's it. I was trying to think if I missed anything, but I think you got it. Just
I
to
think, sorry, I think we did want to say, if you could sum up quickly, like some advice for our listeners, if they are kind of getting into this realm of wanting to learn more about communicating with their guides, their angels, their higher selves, maybe like a quick bit of advice on how they can get started with that.
My best advice, if that's something that you want to learn to pursue, because we all have this ability, on a soul level, we all came in with this ability, and to get started would be, again, like the advice in the reading is to be present and in the moment, set the intention that you are trying to communicate with them. But the most important thing is not to second guess the information that you're receiving, because it can seem like, starting out in the beginning, 9 times out of 10, it definitely feels like it's your imagination, or you're just making this stuff up in your head. But it takes some time to cultivate that. But that's the best place to start, is to remember those three things when you're starting out.
Perfect. And we will dive into that probably a little bit more in
Yeah.
future episodes, which will be really fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, thank you so much for letting
Thank
us
you.
dive into your psyche and and your energy and all things. And we are excited to continue to bring you more information. I think next we'll be interviewing me. You'll be interviewing me, correct?
Yes, that'll be
And
next week.
so we'll be talking about my experience with energy healing and how I got to this point and what I how I do things and it's
Yeah.
et cetera.
All things multidimensional energy
Yes.
healer.
Yes.
So,
So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you join us again.
yes, make sure you tune in next week, and so you won't miss that episode to get to know Lindsey a little bit better and what she does.
And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on social media. We're on Facebook or Instagram or through email. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Thanks for joining us this week on Soaring Through the Depths. Make sure to visit us on Instagram and Facebook at Soaring Through the Depths, where you can catch important news, information about upcoming shows, free giveaways, and exclusive content.
While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on Podbean, or you could simply tell a friend. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe button now. Until then, this is Soaring Through the Depths
With Lindsey Marin
and Andrea Lauren.